Now, if you could tell me your full name, sir.
My full name is Joseph Dean Reilly.
And where and when were you born?
I was born May 7th, 1921, in Janesville, Wisconsin.
So how old does that make you currently?
I'll be 97 in a few days. The 7th of May is my birthday.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you so much.
Now, which branch of the armed services did you serve in?
I first was volunteered for the draft. Went into the military and went to basic training, infantry, Camp Robinson, Arkansas. And I was finishing my basic training. A couple of officers appeared at the camp and they said, "We're looking for volunteers for the Airborne." I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting." I said, "What is that about?" They said, "Well, if you go through the intense physical training and you can pass the physical, you can go to jump school. And if you are successful there, you go through the school, you get your wings, you'll be a qualified paratrooper." And that's exactly what I did.
So which units were you serving?
I joined the 541st, was a training unit in Fort Benning, Georgia. And I went from Fort Benning, Georgia to Camp McCall, North Carolina. I spent some time there. And then we were told we were going to be shipped overseas, and we were. We were shipped over to the European theater. I landed in Belfast, Northern Ireland at first, then went over to Glasgow in Scotland, then down the southern part of England. And there's when I joined the 101st Airborne Division. I saw the Screaming Eagle, and I knew I was part of that organization.
Great. And which company were you with?
I was in Headquarters Company, 3rd Battalion, 501 Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division.
Wonderful. And what years did you serve from and until?
I joined the 501 in March of 1943, and I stayed in it until I was discharged on the last day of the year, December 31st, 1945.
But you had joined the military prior to 1943, correct?
No, I had not.
Okay. And what was your rank?
Private first class.
Private first class. Wonderful. And did you receive any medals or commendations for your service?
Yes, I did.
Which ones?
I received the Bronze Star, and I received the Good Conduct Medal, and I received the ETO ribbon. That's the European Theater of Operations ribbon, with 4 battle stars. I was in 4 major campaigns in World War II.
Can you name those?
Yes, I can. The first campaign I was in was Normandy. I parachuted into Normandy on D-Day, 3:30 in the morning. Place called Utah Beach. After that, our campaign in Normandy, we were assigned to go to Holland. My next jump was in Holland on the 17th of September of 1944. I jumped into Holland. And after Holland, we were back to our base camp in Reims, France. And shortly after that, we were sent to a place called Bastogne in Belgium. I'm a battered bastard of Bastogne. I fought in that battle. After Bastogne, we would cross the Rhine River. We went into Germany, and we fought all the way down to Linz in Austria, and we ended up at Hitler's Eagle's Nest in Berchtesgaden. The war ended on my 24th birthday, May 7th, 1945. I was 24 years old.
What a great way to celebrate your birthday.
It sure was. My birthday is coming up pretty quick.
Now, Holland, that's Operation Market
Garden, that's correct, yes.
And Bastogne, Battle of the Bulge?
Battle of the Bulge.
You did not jump into Bastogne?
No, we did not. No, we went in by truck because it was an urgent campaign. You see, the Germans were broken through several units. They were trying to make a pathway to Antwerp, in which they figured they could divide the Allies at Antwerp and gain more ground, and they darn near did it. And so, but we stopped them at Bastogne.
Great. And what was your job? What was your?
I was a 300 radio operator for the 81 Mortar Platoon. The 81 mortars were they had two kinds of mortars. 60 mortars were smaller, 81s were a little bit bigger, and that's the platoon that I was always in, the 81 mortar platoon. And being a 300 radio operator, I was the man that shall we say, forwarded communications.
Wonderful. Great. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your childhood growing up in Wisconsin.
Sure.
Your family life.
Sure.
Can you tell me about your parents?
Yes.
What their names were?
My father was born in Ireland, a place called Drogheda, just north of Dublin. Mm-hmm. He came to this country with my grandfather and his family. He came here when he was 4 years old. He came to this country in 1884. And that's when they came to Wisconsin from Ireland. And like I said, they were farmers, and they settled in Wisconsin, and they spent the rest of their lives doing their thing.
And did you have any siblings?
Yes, I had one younger brother, Raymond. He's passed away. But there was just the two of us in our family, yes.
What were some of the things that you liked to do for fun growing up?
Well, being a farm boy, you had all kinds of entertainment. The simple things of life back in the 30s, you know. We didn't have, radio was just coming into prominence then. We didn't have television, of course. And so radio was our main entertainment center. I went to high school. I got lucky. My mother was a school teacher, and she helped me. And so when I went to high school, I got on the honor roll. And I was real proud of that. And I graduated in 1939. And as I graduated from high school, then I learned most of my classmates had joined the Red Air National Guard unit, and they were sent to Bastogne and Corregidor.
Now, growing up during the Great Depression, did you realize how bad it was?
No, we did not. And I can tell you why. I think it's a common knowledge. When you're on the farm, you have all the food you want. And when you're young growing up, you're interested in food. And so we had our own pigs, we had our own steers, our own beef. So we weren't short of any food at all on the farm because we grew it there. And we processed our own meat. And so it was a pretty simple way of growing up, really.
Self-sufficient for the most part.
Self-sufficient in the rural areas of the Midwest. Mm-hmm. That's right.
So are you guys pretty secluded as far as being close to other people, other families?
Not really. Your farm community, Janesville was probably a population of maybe 30,000 at that time. And it was a home of a General Motors plant, assembly plant. And Parker Penn was the company that I worked for as I was growing up. And they were there. That was their home, Parker family home. And so it was a good company to work for. And that's the way things were when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm. And you helped out on the farm?
Oh, yes. I had a younger brother, and my father and I. There was just the two of us. And so we helped on the farm. We had 176 acres of dairy farm. We had dairy cattle. We did have some beef cattle, too. We had pigs. We were kept busy on the farm because we planted all our own crops, you know, and rotated them. We used horses at that time to help us on the farm and to cultivate the land and everything. And tractors were just starting to come in. Tractors became more prevalent and perhaps I could say they became the thing that farmers were interested in. The tractors became very prominent late in the 30s and in the early 40s. All the farmers were out rushing to buy tractors then. And then, of course, the war was beginning, and people were wanting more produce from the farms. So the demand was there, and that's what we tried to supply them with.
So farmers played a pretty significant role in the war effort.
They sure did. They sure did. Yes, they did. They grew the wheat, they grew the oats, they grew all the grains, they grew the corn. They were very much in support of the military, which is heavily on. They rely heavily on the civilians to supply them with food for the military. Yes, they do.
And which high school did you graduate from?
Janesville High School. It was only one high school at that time in Janesville. It was like I say a population of maybe 25, 30,000, and we just had one high school, and I graduated in 1939. I was lucky, like I said, my mother was a school teacher, so I got on the honor roll. Most of my classmates that I graduated with, they went, like I said, to Bastogne and Corregidor. So that's.
And did you have any interest in joining up at that time?
No, I didn't. I wasn't interested in joining the National Guard. I thought, well, these men have an interest in the military. I didn't have any interest in the military. So then, as the time progressed, I got a job in a defense factory, because at that time in the United States, most companies were turning into making things for the military.
What year was
this? Was 1943. And well, actually, it was 1942 when I first started working. I left the farm in 1941, started working in the industrial part of our country. In fact, I got a job in Rockford, Illinois, and I was working in a defense factory there. And then, as time went on, I went from one company to another, and ended up with a company that made fuses for the military. And I joined this company, and then I volunteered for the draft and went into the military in March of 1943. And I was happy to join that, and stayed in, and then joined the Paratroopers, and went through my airborne training at Fort Benning, Georgia, and became a qualified paratrooper. I went overseas, boarded a Liberty ship in Newport News, Virginia, in February of 1943, and ended up in Belfast, Northern Ireland. From there, we went over to Glasgow, Scotland, and then down to the base camp of the 101st Airborne Division, which is the southern part of England, and that was where I started my combat training.
So let me rewind a little bit to December 7th, 1941.
Yes.
You remember where you were?
Yes, I was. I was working in the defense factory, and it was a Sunday, and the word went out that the bombs were dropped at Pearl Harbor. And I had a lot of friends that were in the military, and some of them were stationed there. And so that was quite an event for the United States, entering into the World War II against the Japanese.
And do you remember sort of your thoughts at that time?
Yes, I do remember my thoughts at that time. I thought, well, these guys over there now, they got to face the Japanese, and that's going to be a pretty difficult mission for them. But I thought, well, I think the United States has always had pretty good luck with their people in the military. So I thought, well, here we go again. Here we go again. And that's just the way it started.
And were you aware of what was happening in Europe and happening in
Yes, we were. We were kept up with the news on the televisions, or not so much on TV, but on the radio. And so we knew what was going on with the power that Hitler had in Germany, and how he was gaining, more area in the European theater. And so we were quite knowledgeable about what was going on. Yes, we were. But we were surprised that when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. That was a surprise to everybody. Yeah. And so that was the linchpin that got us into World War II.
And then Germany declared war on the U.S.
That's right. Germany, you see, they formed an alliance with Japan, and they'd already taken over quite a bit of the European countries over there. They didn't have enough of shall we say, plans to go and conquer England, but it was a pretty scary thing there at that time. England was facing them all alone until the United States got into it, and after Pearl Harbor. Prior to that, England was facing the Germans by themselves. Yes, they were. Yeah.
So March of 1943, you joined up.
Yes, I did.
And can you tell me about your basic training?
Yes, I went. I was inducted in Milwaukee, and went to a place called Camp Robinson, Arkansas, and this was a camp that was what was called infantry unassigned. That meant that you went through basic training, and you would be assigned to another unit when you finished your training program. And that's exactly what happened. Only, in my case, a couple of officers appeared at the camp, and they said, we're asking for volunteers for the Airborne. And I thought, well, let's check this out. So they said, well, if you join the Airborne, you have to go through school, you have to pass the physical, you get your wings, you get $50 a month extra to jump. Well, I was getting 50, so this is a 100% increase. And I thought, well, that sounds all right to me. So I did pass the physical. I did go to Fort Benning. I got my wings. I was shipped off to Camp McCall, North Carolina for further training and maneuvers until I was shipped overseas in February of 1943. I went to England, base camp there, and that's where I joined the 101st Airborne Division.
So did you do any jump training in the U.S.?
Oh, yes, yes. You have to do 5 jumps before you get your wings.
Was that in Fort Benning?
That's at Fort Benning. And you have to pack your own chute. And you do. After that, the riggers pack them. But you pack your own chute the first 5 times you jump. And you get your wings, and you get to blouse your trousers to show your jump boots. That's a pretty important thing for paratroopers.
Big sense of pride there.
You bet it is. You walk down the street there, and you got your jump boots on, and you got your paratrooper wings on. You're a first-class soldier. You're ready for combat.
Now, would you see any other men with their pants bloused but not wearing the?
Oh, that caused a confrontation right away. Right away. Yeah, no. Yes, it happened a lot when you went into the areas that you were stationed at. You know, the little towns or villages where you were stationed, and you saw somebody with a pair of jump boots on and they didn't have their wings. Oh yeah, that caused a confrontation right away.
Do you remember your first jump?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Tell me about it.
Yes. In training at Fort Benning, they take you up on the plane, and they say, now, you guys, your first jump, and they have a jump master there, and so you circle the area, and you can see you're up maybe anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 feet when the jump master says, there's a red light on right by the door, and there's no hinges on the door. The doors are taken off, so it's just an opening there. The jump master says, stand up and hook up. You stand up and you hook up your static line. Static line runs the whole length of the plane. You hook up your static line. That static line is hooked to your backpack. The backpack is your chute. When you go out that door, that backpack rips right off the back of the parachute, and the parachute opens. You're starting on your way down. And that's called paratrooper jump.
Were you excited for your first jump?
Oh, you bet. You bet you're excited. Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. You get up there and you look out the door. You know, the guy's right in front of you, and he's got his hands outside the door there, taped hinges, and you're directly behind him. You look out there and, oh my God, this is 1,200 feet. We're going to jump. It's kind of scary. But you go out that door, that chute opens, you're happy it opens. Glad it comes. It's so quiet. You know, when you're in the airplane, there's noise. It's terrific because there's no doors on the plane. It's very noisy. There's a lot of other planes flying right with you in a circle. The minute you leave that plane, your chute opens, seems like everything becomes quiet for a few seconds. Very quiet, peaceful. You see all these other guys out there with their chutes at different levels ahead of you. Quite an experience.
Was there any hesitation on your part at all?
No. Most times you're trained when he hits your back like that, you're gone. You're gone.
And you had to make 5 of these jumps.
Yes, you do before you get your wings. You make 5 jumps. After that, the riggers pack the chutes. We don't have to pack any more chutes, but first 5 times you do have to pack your own.
And were you jumping with any equipment at this time, or was this?
Interesting question. You had a canteen belt with your canteen cup in it, you know, your little holder on the belt, and you would empty out half the water out of that canteen. you didn't want that full canteen. That'd be too much weight to jump with. You'd empty out half that water. Little did we know we'd be jumping with 150 pounds of equipment in combat. You know what I mean? Some things are so interesting because you think, oh, I don't want to have that canteen full of water. When you get in combat, you got this musette bag on the front. You got your own ammunition. You're carrying your own weapon. You're carrying your own food in a musette bag. You're loaded down. You've got 150 pounds of equipment. I weighed 150 pounds. And you had to take with you a whole lot of things called C2. C2 looks like clay. It's like clay balls, you know, and that's an explosive. And you take that with you when you jump, and then when you land, you give it to one of the other men that has all the fuses. And so then he uses that to detonate bridges or other obstacles that you encounter when you land. That's right.
Now, the men that you were training with,
yes,
did they continue on with you to the 101st, or did you guys
pardon me,
broken up?
We were broken up. Some of the men went to the 82nd, some went to the 101st, but yes, we went through training school, parachute school. Most pardon me, most of them went to other units. But they did. You see, the 101st and the 82nd were two big airborne divisions. It comprised over 9,000 men, and so it was a big operation.
Mm-hmm. So when did you find out that you were being shipped out to Europe?
Pardon me. After you finish your basic training, you're stationed around mostly the East Coast. That's where we were for North Carolina. So we were stationed there, and so you were sent to they call in the military it's called a debarkation port. We were sent to Newport News, Virginia. We boarded a Liberty ship. 5th of February, 1943. We left Newport.
43 or 44?
43. 40, wait a minute. Yeah, 43. 43, yeah. Then we went over to England. Mm-hmm. We were stationed in England until we made our jump into Normandy.
But that was in 44, correct?
Yes, it was.
So you were in England for...
Well, yeah,
over a year?
Yeah, we were there for a few months before we were, committed to combat. Mm-hmm. On the June 6th, 1944, when we jumped. Pardon me. When we jumped into Normandy, I jumped 3:30 in the morning. Landed in a little pasture near Utah Beach.
Well, before we get into that, let me ask you the few months that you were in England, you continue doing more training, or?
Oh, yes. Yes. Pardon me. We did some night jumps in England.
Okay.
We jumped at night there, I think 3 or 4 times. We were there from... I got there in February, and we jumped into Normandy on the 6th of June. So from June from February to June, we made several jumps in England. Some were night jumps, some were day jumps, and getting ready for the invasion. Now, the very last part of May, we were shipped to the Airdrones in England, and we were put behind barbed wire enclosures. Security was very tight. You could not leave the camp. We waited for the weather report to come down. General Eisenhower decided the weather was good on June 5th, and he said it would be probably good on June 6th. So prior to that, the weather people were holding us up because there were storms over the English Channel, and a storm can raise havoc with a bunch of paratroopers leaving the plane. Because the planes have to fly in a circular motion, and there's planes stacked up there, maybe 3 or 4 different flights above you and a couple of flights below you. You're circling around and around for 2 or 3 hours, waiting for that first plane to cross the English Channel to the coast of France. And I must have been up in the air at least 3 hours. About 3:30 in the morning is when I landed in right off of Utah Beach. I came down. I could see a few trees and the kind of outlining the sky as I came down. About 3:30 in the morning. Back in those times, there was what we called summertime. Well, 3:30 in the morning, it was breaking day. Breaking day when I landed at Utah Beach. And I landed right where I was supposed to land. Only 1 out of 5 paratroopers landed where they were supposed to land. I did. I was grateful for that.
Now, can we, before we get too far ahead, can we talk about the days leading up to the jump?
Sure.
Did you know what you guys were preparing for, what you were gearing up for? What information was provided to you?
We were provided with very, very little. We were brought into what they called situation rooms at the airport. And you went into this big room, and they had like these big like tennis tables. And they had them covered with a cloth. And they'd take the cloth off, and there you'd see a miniature, maybe a church steeple, maybe you'd see a river, maybe you'd see a dike. They had all the terrain outlined on these tables, and you were supposed to memorize that. Now, you weren't allowed to draw any maps, because if you got captured, the Germans would know where you were. So you had to memorize everything. So you did, and then they'd test you. The next day, they'd bring you into this room, and you'd look at that table, and there was a big canvas over the table. They'd pull the canvas off. They'd say, they give you about 1 minute. They'd say, what did you see? They covered it up again. You had to memorize what you saw, because you were not allowed to draw any pictures or no notes or anything like that. If you got captured, the enemy would know where you were. So that's just the way the situation was. And it was the right thing to do. I could understand that security-wise. It was a smart thing to do, and it worked. It worked for us.
So you guys didn't have any GPS back then to help you navigate.
No.
So June 5th was supposed to be the D-Day.
That's right.
So you guys, I'm assuming you were gearing up, getting prepared.
Oh, yes.
Can you take me through that and kind of, what's going through your mind?
Well, sure I can. When you're at the air base, the security is very tight. You can't. You're behind. I think I'm repeating myself.
That's okay.
You're behind barbed wire enclosure, so security is very tight, and you're there, and you're not allowed to leave the area. You're quarantined, they called it. But the food is very, very good. Oh, the Air Force has good food. We didn't have very good food in the infantry, but boy, when you get that at the airport, you get food like you can't believe. Well, it's a common knowledge. A lot of people say, condemned man's last meal. That's exactly what it is. They're giving you one good meal before you go into combat. A lot of the men, it was their last meal. That's the way it is. And you have your K rations with you. They're not very tasty, but you have them in a little package there on with your uniform. You have your little rain cover, like a little miniature raincoat, and you got, like I said, you have your K rations, which are, they're not very tasteful, but you have to use them for the first 3 or 4 days you're on the ground because there's no kitchen set up for any food or anything like that, so you're on your own. But then you can go out the Frenchman's garden and you can go in there and dig out some onions and some radishes, and oh my God, you can get some lettuce and you can make up a sandwich there, you know. I being from a farm, we were used to butchering our own cattle and pigs. So what happens when you jump in combat? There's a dead cow. What do you think's going to happen to that dead cow? We walk over there and skin that cow, and we got that meat in the frying pan before the body heat's even gone out of the meat. It's kind of strong, but hey, it tastes pretty good. When you're in combat, you're hungry all the time, because your adrenaline is running so high that you're just looking for something to eat all the time. And we did. We went into Frenchman's garden. We got the scallions, and we got anything we could find, and we used that to supplement our rations. And
now, when did you receive the orders that it was go time? Like, was it during the day on the 5th? I mean, did you guys actually board the planes? Did you how far along did you get before they called off the mission?
Well, if I remember correctly, and at the aerodromes in England, like I said, you're all in these secure areas, and so when we were ordered out on the plane, out on the tarmac for board the plane, we knew then that we were going into France, and so we boarded the aircraft, and then the aircraft circled around and around and around until, like I said, till the last plane leaves the ground, and the first one goes across the channel to Normandy. I jumped at 3:30 in the morning. I landed in a little pasture near Utah Beach. Right beside me landed the colonel of the 502 Regiment. And so we went from that one little pasture to another one, to another one, to another one. And we were gaining, more stragglers, we were called. And one of them was our commanding officer, Major General Maxwell Taylor. He was with us. And so we went from these little pastures till we got to we had 100 people in our group. And then they split them up in two and divided up who was going to command them. And then a couple of colonels come along, and they got in a big argument about who was going to charge of what. And but it was solved, and we went into our first days of combat.
So once you boarded the planes and you guys are assembling formation, you're in the air for a few hours.
That's right.
Once you got your heading and you're flying across the channel, how long were you flying before you actually jumped?
I would say probably 45 minutes.
So it's relatively quick.
Yeah, right. That's right, because the flak is coming up. The anti-aircraft guns are firing. And the flak is coming up from the coast of Normandy.
Were you able to see anything flying over the channel? Were you able to see any of the ships down below?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, although it was kind of dim, It was, like I said, at that time, on double summertime at 3:30 in the morning, it's what shall I say? It's almost like what you call twilight, in the evening. Yep. It's the beginning of the day, and so it's things are noticeable in the air, and you see the other planes flying right beside you, so you know that this is a go.
Can you describe the amount of numbers of ships and planes that
oh yes, you saw all these ships as you crossed the English Channel. You look down, you saw all these ships in the channel. The Navy has, and the different units in the British too were there, and so you saw all the Armada, I guess they called it, crossing the water, going over toward France. That's right.
And then once you guys are reaching the coast of Normandy, that's when the flak starts.
That's right. Yep, that's right.
And this was the first time you'd ever experienced.
That's right. It was the first time.
So was it? How did it?
Oh yeah, then you take it pretty serious. Hey, these guys are trying to kill me before I even get on the ground.
It became real at
You
that
better
point.
believe it came real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it was, because you don't have time. You got your own weapon, you got your own material that you have to carry with you, your rations, your ammunition, and we each carried a little bit of this clay, like I said, that they use for blowing bridges, and so it was kind of a scary situation, but it was one of those that you knew you had to go through to get on the ground.
And what type of plane did you jump out of?
C-47s.
C-47.
Mm-hmm.
And did your plane take on any flak?
Oh yes, yes it did. Yeah, but we got lucky; we didn't get a hit.
Mm-hmm.
But you looked out over the other aircraft flying with you, and some of them got a direct hit. You know, they just blow up because the C-47, the gas tank to the motor proximity is pretty close, and so if a bomb hits them or anything hits them, a big shell hits them, they just go up and fire. Right, they do.
Mm-hmm. And how many men would be on board?
Oh, probably anywhere between 25 and 35.
So that's a lot of troops all at once.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
And you mentioned earlier you chose to jump second.
Pardon?
You chose to jump second?
Yes.
Did that hold true on D-Day as well?
Yes. The man with the heaviest equipment gets to pick what position he leaves the plane in. Mm-hmm. I always pick number 2. Because I was, like I said, I was jumping with the radio.
And you mentioned that you landed where you were supposed to.
Yes, I did.
I understand a lot of other people did not.
Oh, that's true. They dropped in some of them dropped in the English Channel. Some of them were dropped far, far away from where they were supposed to land. Oh, yeah.
And that had to do with varying speeds and altitude.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So
and when the pilot turned on the green light, that's when you left the plane.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have a choice about when you were going to leave the plane.
So were you guys, do you remember what altitude you jumped from? Do you have an idea of what that was?
I would say in the neighborhood of probably 1,200 feet. Sometimes in combat, as combat went on and we made more jumps, sometimes you jumped at 750 feet. They want to bring you down as close as they can. But that's more scary. You're spending less time in the air, but it's also, if anything happens to your chute, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time for
the activate the reserve. That's right. That's right.
And do you remember jumping out and your chute opening, and then
Yep.
what did you see? Like what was around you?
A lot of other chutes.
Yeah.
And you saw some streamers. Streamers, when there's 22 panels in the chute. If you have too many blown panels, it's like a lady with a silk stocking. If they have too many runs in them, the air comes out too fast. You're dropping too fast. And one thing you always want to be careful is you never want to walk on top of another man's chute. Because if you walk on top of his chute, you're depressing that convex, and that lets out more air, see? So you try to be careful not to get too close to other troopers at the time. You leave the plane.
And you're able to control.
You can work on your static lines. You pull your risers, and try and get them out that way. Later you use the risers on your jump boots. I got the risers on my jump boots over there, and but that's just the way it works.
So once you landed safely on the ground, you were telling me you met up with.
Sure.
You started collecting.
That's right. That's right. You start collecting other people. Mm-hmm. And in Normandy, the terrain there is pastures, but then all around the pastures is a big mound of dirt, like about maybe like almost like a half a city block. They have these pastures, and then there's a big mound of dirt. And that's where you have to go from one pasture to the other. There's usually a little gate you can get in there. And so that's the way the terrain was in Normandy when we jumped. And there's always a certain amount of dead cattle there because the Air Force is flying over and they're dropping all kinds of incendiaries. And so there's going to be some dead cattle and horses in the area in which you land. Yes, there is.
So where did you guys go from there once you sort of collected yourselves? And
yeah, once we started collecting more and more people, then the officers came in charge, and they were directing us where to go. And we knew that we had to, the minute we landed, we knew that we had to go in there and we had to make the causeway open for the 4th Infantry Division to come aboard. Now, the infantry divisions are coming aboard with ships in the English Channel. And we are jumpers. So we're in there ahead of them, but we're trying to neutralize the area there so there isn't too many enemy there that's going to fire on them when they start coming in ashore. And I always remember we let the 4th Infantry Division come aboard and right there on Utah Beach. Mm-hmm.
So you guys were actually backtracking a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yep.
And it's my understanding that as a paratrooper and airborne guys, you guys were only supposed to be out there for 3 days after the jump. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
that was sort of the plan.
It's a sort of a plan. You got that right. Nothing written down.
In stone,
no,
right?
No, right. But you want to clear the area as quick as you could. Get your chute off the field, because other paratroopers might be coming in to land right beside you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so you had to be conscious of what was going on in the area, and you want to get your chute folded up and get it out of there as quick as you can, and deliver it to some other guys that are going to supposedly take care of your chute for jumps that'll happen later on. But yeah, you want to get off that field real quick, and because you're going to be facing the enemy, so you better have your weapon locked and loaded, you know. Then you pull the safety off and you're ready for combat.
And what weapon were you carrying?
I was carrying a Thompson submachine gun, a .45 caliber, good for about 75 yards. That was my weapon. Because I was a radio operator, that was what I was assigned to use, the Thompson submachine gun.
And you're still carrying the 150 pounds of
That's right.
gear on your back.
You are.
And can you talk about the resistance that you encountered once you started fighting?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. You know, the enemy, they're there. They know the word gets out pretty quick when you see a whole bunch of paratroopers, a whole bunch of parachutists coming in over area. They know there's an airdrop. And depending upon the resistance in the area, you're going to be facing the enemy pretty quick. Yes, you are.
Now, did you guys make it all the way to the beach?
No, we didn't make it all the way to the beach, but we got close to the beach. Close to it. The amphibious people were coming in off the English Channel. They were coming in with their boats, you know. And so we were back a little bit beyond them. And of course, then there was some terrain. There was some terrain obstacles there. You probably heard about the Rangers going up the cliffs, 150 feet up there, and that was a pretty strenuous thing. Yeah, there's a few cliffs around the ocean there in Normandy, but that's just the way it is. You go with what you've got. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so you jump, and then you know that you've got to organize with other people, and your objective is going to be made out for you. You're going to face the enemy pretty damn quick.
So how long was that first day for you? I mean, you guys started
3:30 in the morning. It lasted until, I would say, midnight. It was a long day. But in that time, as I explained a few minutes ago, daylight, double summertime becomes daylight about 3:30 in the morning, so you have a long day. And even at 11 o'clock at night, you could read a newspaper in Normandy. So it's quite a bit of daylight, which is to our advantage. Yes, it was.
It must have been an exhausting day.
It was very exhausting, very exhausting.
And it's a new reality.
It's a new reality. It's hot, and you're carrying a lot of equipment, and you're perspiring a lot. And yes, it is. It's a scary situation. It really is, because it's a pretty serious thing. It's your life or theirs.
And did you lose any of your comrades?
Oh yes,
first day?
We lost a lot of them. A lot of them. Some of them were dropped in the English Channel. Some of them were shot as they were coming down. Oh yeah, The casualties are pretty heavy in our drop into Normandy, D-Day.
So you feel that you were just lucky? One of the
You
lucky
better
ones?
believe it. You got that right. Absolutely right about that. Because the guys are getting killed on both sides of you, and you don't. Hey, you're a lucky man. For sure.
And were you able to get any sleep that first night?
No.
Where did you guys sort of dig in?
You dug in. That's right. You absolutely. You dug a foxhole as quick as you could, and you got. And it was cold, and sometimes it was rainy, and so it was not a very weather-wise, not a very conducive climate for you.
Nothing like San Diego. Huh?
There you go.
Where did you guys stay that first night?
We were close to the beach that first night. We dug in. We were close to the beach, and we didn't move very far that first night. Then as when daylight came, and then we started to move to our objectives that we were supposed to take, then you had a target then, and you were moving toward the target. That's right.
Do you remember what your objective and
Yes, I
target
do.
was?
Yeah, I remember we were supposed to neutralize the area for the 4th Infantry Division to come aboard, and we did. We did. And they were coming in off their vessels, on the channel, and so we tried to make it easier for them. Once they get the division gets their foot on the ground, then they can move in their trucks and their tanks and their light and their heavy artillery. Then they start coming aboard. That's a big advantage for you because you don't have on the paratroopers. You don't have any heavy artillery supporting you. You're just out there on your own, buddy.
It's whatever you got on you.
That's right.
So did you guys meet up with the 4th?
Yes, we did.
And I imagine...
We're very grateful to see him.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is, if the enemy's between the two of you, you guys are essentially going to meet each other head on.
That's right.
Is there any confusion as
Oh,
as to
sure
whether
there was.
They're friendly or
Oh, no,
foes?
because the Germans have a uniform, and
Right.
we have the uniform.
So it's
and-
pretty clear that...
Oh, yes, it is,
you're not
definitely.
gonna fire.
And you soon learn the different sounds of their weapons.
Mhm.
The 88 has a very distinctive sound when they fire it.
Yeah.
And you become very, very knowledgeable real quick about the 88 shells. You know what they sound like when they start coming in. And they're a pretty powerful weapon. And they tried to sell the 88 to the U.S. military in 1943, but our procurement people didn't think it was a very good weapon. What a bunch of dummies they were. It was a very, very good weapon that the Germans had, the 88 millimeters. They were a very powerful weapon. And so, that's just the way war is, I mean, sometimes our people made mistakes and we had to pay for it.
Accidents do happen.
Yeah, it sure does.
Now, within your unit, with your comrades, you guys would be able to communicate at nighttime. I understand you had sort of, they call it the cricket. Did that apply to you as well, or was that a different?
A clicker.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I got one on the shelf over there someplace. I got a clicker over there.
Uh-huh.
Clicked it. See if it's in that drawer there. Open that.
The top one?
Yeah, that top.
This one?
No, the other one over there. Yeah, that one's just the other side of it. See if there's one in there. There'll be a little metal thing.
I don't see it.
Okay. I got one over there someplace. Anyway, it makes a little clicking sound when you click it, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Right.
So how would you use that to communicate with your...
Well, when you clicked it and you heard two clicks, you knew it was one of your own people.
So was it 1 and then 2 as a response?
That's right. That's right. Right. And we were the only unit in the military that used that.
The 101st?
Yep. Yep, we were. Pretty smart move. Somebody figured that one out. Saved us a lot of people, I'll tell you. They got smart people in the military, too.
So how long were you fighting in France for?
We were there for 39 days in Normandy. and they were put aboard of a British vessel in Cherbourg back to England. And as we were going from Cherbourg to Southampton, we saw these look like a plane, and then all of a sudden you saw it, and then you didn't hear anything, and then pretty soon you heard a big explosion. They were the first V-2 bombs coming in over Britain from Holland. And that was the first time we ever saw the V-2 bombs. And we were leaving France, going back to our base camp in Southampton. And it was a big surprise to us because we didn't have any idea what the hell they were. We soon learned what they were.
Bit of an eye-opener?
Sure was. It sure was.
Now, did you have any expectations after you landed on D-Day about how long you'd be there for? And
no, they don't tell you anything. You're just under orders, and you do your job. We advanced. We took some areas, and then eventually we were told to go to Cherbourg and board a Navy British vessel back to Southampton, which we did. And then we went back to our camp. They said, well, now, you guys got to get ready for another mission. Okay. They said it's going to be a Tournai at Bastogne. Well, in the meantime, General Patton took over that area of Tournai, so we didn't have to jump there. So our next jump was the 17th of September, and we jumped into a place called Holland. And we jumped at Airborne near Veckel. And the Polish paratroopers jumped there too, and the British jumped there at Arnhem.
And this is a daytime jump?
Yes, it was. It was our first daytime jump. And it was a success for us, but it was a very costly mission for the British. They jumped at Arnhem, and there was 2 German divisions sitting right there waiting for them. They got slaughtered at Arnhem. And yeah, it was a very, very costly thing, but that's the way battle is, and there's no way of getting around it. And you're sitting in there, you have to do your job.
Now, going back to France for a second, you were there for 39 days, you said. Mm-hmm. Was it constant fighting every day?
No. Sometimes maybe you'd be in a position where you were what we call a holding position, where somebody had advanced and taken over a certain area, and you were there kind of for a backup for them. And so some days were more, shall we say, quiet than other days. But when you got the word that you had advanced against the enemy, then all hell broke loose. I mean, the shells were flying all over the place. Because the Germans had the V2s they could fire at us, and they had the 88s, and it was pretty powerful.
And those are long range.
Yeah, they were.
Did you encounter any of the French civilians?
Oh yes, we did right away.
How did they receive you guys?
They did the best they could. We had a language barrier, but we had some people in our unit that did speak French, which is a big advantage for us. And yeah, they helped us immensely. They did. They really did. Yeah. The French underground. Yep, they were a strong organization. The Dutch underground were even stronger. They were even more on. They had, because the Germans had occupied Holland for 5 years. They were really fed up with the Nazis, and they really were a good organization. And we were so happy to have them help us out because they knew the whole areas around there because it was their homeland. They knew every nick and corner the Germans were. They knew what they had for defense, and it was a big help to us.
So they'd been gathering information for years and years and years.
For 5 years, yes they had.
Now, as a radio man,
right?
What are you doing while you're fighting? Are you relaying messages for people?
Yes.
Communicating
The 300 radio man is there with the 81 mortar platoon. There's 4 81 mortars in our company, and so I'm the operator for the radio. I'm relaying communications from the 4 mortars that we have in our company to battalion and regimental headquarters, because they're the people that give us the orders what to do next. If regiment comes down or battalion comes down and they said, hey, you've got a new target. You got to move your guns over here to this particular area, and you've got an azimuth over here, and they give you directions on what your azimuth is. Your azimuth is your direction, 24 east or 25 south or whatever it is they tell you. That's where your targets are. That's where you fire your weapons. But you don't fire your weapons until you get the word to do it. And it's all taken care of, all the firepower is taken care of pretty much by radio. Some of it by telephone, but mostly by radio. They have these handheld 510s, they call them, telephones, and they could communicate, company and battalion could communicate on that. Battalion to regiment, that was more the bigger phones, so that was a little bit different situation. But, of course, they were covering more area, too.
So being out in combat for almost 40 days,
Mm-hmm.
were you wearing the same clothes for that entire period of time?
Sure you were.
So you're sleeping in the ground, no change of clothes. You're getting rained, it's cold.
You got it. You got it.
Not many luxuries out there.
You better believe there isn't. You wish you had a whole bottle of deodorant, and that wasn't possible. But it gets to be pretty hairy, I'll tell you that.
Did you miss home at any point?
Huh?
Did you miss home at any point?
Oh yeah, you miss home all the time, but you don't talk about it. If you do, you start talking about home, you're just demoralizing yourself. Right. No, they don't talk about home. No.
And you were about 23 years old while you were over there. Were you one of the older?
Yes, I was. Yeah, a lot of men were 18, 19 years old,
So
20 years old.
They look up to you for.
Yeah, they kind of respected you if you had a little more time on you. They kind of respected your opinion about things. That's right. They did. Yes, they did. Yeah.
Now, I think I failed to ask you earlier, but you were an HQ company.
Headquarters company.
Can you explain that a little bit? How is that different than any of the letter A, B, C company?
Well, headquarters company is the company in which is in charge of the, shall we say, the everyday firing of the weapons. Headquarters company, they're the ones that, the rifle companies ask the headquarters company what the target is. The headquarters company supplies that information to the rifle companies. The rifle companies try to fulfill that particular order. In other words, you got a big old home over here that they figure the Germans are inside it, and you want to shell that place. Then you got to go through the procedure of calling battalion and calling regiment and telling them you got a target out here you'd like to fire on. You have to wait until they tell you if you can fire on that target. That's the way it works. And when you can fire on that target, then you ask the weapons to fire. And that's what they do. 81 mortar is a pretty powerful weapon. The 60s were a good mortar too, but they were the smaller mortars. The rifle companies used the 60s. The headquarters company used the 81s. They packed a little more punch. And that's just the way it was what they called in the military the MO, the method of operations. Modus operandi, some people call it. But that's the way things are. That's the way you have to do.
So once you guys returned to England after your first stint there, you're able to clean up, you're able to get a hot meal, I'm assuming.
That's right.
How did that feel to kind of...
It sure felt good, I can tell you that, to get a hot shower and to get a good meal, because in combat, especially in a situation like Normandy, they didn't have any kitchens or anything for us. You just had the K rations, and they're not very tasty. Like I said, you supplemented them when you went to Frenchman's Garden. You picked up all the onions and whatever else you could find to eat and to supplement your food. But And then there was a thing called Calvados. Calvados, cognac, powerful liquor, powerful liquor. Well, there's always a supply. The French always have a good supply of wine, and more than hard to get the Calvados and cognac. That cognac is pretty powerful stuff. You can light a fire with that. A little blue flame will come out. It's almost alcohol, you know what I mean? Oh, God, that's powerful stuff. But that's just the way it was. Use what you could.
And then you spent about 2 months until you jumped into Holland, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So did you guys do more training? What
Oh, yes, we did. Yes, we did more training. After Normandy, we went back to England, our base camp, and we had to do maneuvers then. And, the guys had been in combat. Now, once you're in combat, you know what it is. So the second time you go in combat, you get out on the airport, you're boarding the aircraft, and you hear pop, pop, pop. The guys are shooting themselves in the foot. They don't want to go on the mission. But what happens then, they don't go on the mission. But when we come back, they have a court-martial. I'm a guard at the court-martial. Oh, yeah. So you didn't go on this combat mission, so you're going to get punishment. 2/3 of your pay and 6 months in the guardhouse. They're not reporting for duty. And some of the guys were happy to do it. They shoot themselves in the foot. They do anything to not have to go into combat again, because they knew what it was about after their first experience in Normandy. We got to Holland. So it's just the way people are. I mean, it's just there's a certain innate ability for a person. You don't want to. Very few people are, so we say, interested in suicide, because that's a one-way street. And in combat, you do anything you can. Some guys, like I said, will wound themselves so they don't have to go into the next mission, and they get court-martialed for doing that. But it's just the way it is.
And were you guys getting replacement troops?
Oh yes, all the time, all the time. After every mission, we got a whole bunch of new guys coming in, never been in combat before.
So there's a dynamic there.
That's right. Yeah.
You have people coming up to you asking you.
Absolutely,
what it's like.
Absolutely. What do I do? What did you do? How did it work out? Were you fired on that particular target for 10 or 20 minutes? Do you think you did any good, or do you think it was just a waste of ammunition? It was always a tough thing to follow, because you didn't know. A lot of times you didn't know if you were successful in killing the enemy or wounding the enemy, till you got up to where they were, and then you saw that you had done your job, but they're dead. Well, then you knew your mission was accomplished.
And did you become close with anyone in particular? Did you make friends?
Oh yes, you do. Absolutely. In your company, you have buddies. Yes, you do.
Did you have any?
Yes, I did. From Kentucky. His father was a bootlegger in Kentucky and a coal miner. I'll tell you one thing, that guy was a good shot. He knew everything about firing a rifle, and they fired him a lot in Kentucky. When the revenuers came into the valley, all the people that lived in Kentucky that had their stills, they all knew the revenue was coming. He let them know he was coming. He didn't want to get killed. They were good shots, though. Those guys knew how to fire. They were good.
You remember his name?
Tom Chapman. Yep.
Did he make it throughout the war as well?
Yes, he did make it throughout the war. Matter of fact, he enlisted after the war was over and stayed in for a couple of years after that. But, yeah, he was a good man, Tom was. He was a good shot with a rifle, and he was a good soldier. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He always used to say to me, You never know when you're going to go, he said, but sometimes it could be at midnight. He picked midnight as a particular time to die, I guess.
All right.
Oh, he was a character, Tom was. Well, he was a good man. He was a good soldier.
Now, as you're gearing up for this second jump,
yeah,
it's obviously different than your first.
It is. It is much different.
Can you talk about that a little bit? How is morale at that point? What's sort of going through your head? And
well, I'll tell you what it does. It shifts out the ones that are going to help you and the ones that are not. The guy that doesn't want to jump on the second jump, he isn't going to be a much of advantage to you, is he?
Which is better for you, I would assume. If they're not there with you.
That's right. That's right. He isn't going to help you if he's getting a tight squeeze. He isn't going to back you up. And that was true. That was true. Yep, it was. And they got court-martialed for it. But hey, 6 months and 2/3 of your pay for not going on a mission, that's not too severe. The way I looked at it anyway.
Now, as you're boarding the plane again, is your adrenaline going?
Oh, you bet it is.
Yeah.
You bet it is.
Were you able to sleep the night before?
No, you can't sleep. You pretend you can, but you can't. Pressure's too great. Yeah. And you get good food. You're in the Air Force, you're at the airport, you're behind secure wires, in secure areas, and boy, the food is absolutely fabulous. We're not used to good food, so that was a big plus. Well, like I said, it's what a lot of people say, it's your last meal for the condemned man. Oh, that's the way it was.
And what was your objective jumping into Holland?
Our objective to jumping into Holland was to deter the Germans from advancing further into the Netherlands. See, they had been occupying the Netherlands for 5 years. The Dutch people were pretty well fed up with them. And so we were in there to neutralize it, and we did. We had pretty good luck at Holland. Although the weather was dead set against us, and the dikes and everything on the roads were dead set against the artillery moving their heavy equipment. We fought under the British in Holland, which was a disaster. Montgomery talked Eisenhower into leading that operation, Market Garden, and he did. And so we had to fight under the British, and we were not happy about that. Not happy at all.
Why is that?
Well, we didn't think that they were aggressive enough. They didn't take advantage when they had an opportunity, and you've got to be quick on taking an opportunity in combat. As your opportunity can come and go real quick. And we didn't think the British were, shall we say, they weren't as aggressive as we were. Right.
Different training.
Different training, that's right.
So you're taking orders from the British at this point?
We were. We're fighting under the British. And we didn't like it. We didn't like it one bit. No. We didn't think much of Montgomery because he wore the red beret of the paratrooper, but he wasn't a qualified paratrooper jumper. Right away.
Lack of respect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lack of respect.
Now, you guys jumped in during the daytime. Were you guys getting fired at? Were you guys taking on flak?
Yeah, we were taking on. You're right. We were taking more flak from the anti-aircraft weapons on the ground as we were coming in to Holland. Once we got on the ground, then the first thing that happened to us is this man appeared to us, and we looked at him. We thought, well, this man is he must be of some religion. He had a black, like his whole attire was black, and he was a Catholic priest. He said to us, he said, "I want you men to help me." We thought, well, what the heck could we do to help him? He said, "I've got 70 men over here that are all victims in an insane asylum." He said, "I don't want the Germans to find them." He said, "Can you help us move them to a safer area?" We said, "Yeah, we'll try and help you move them to a safer area," and we did. There was no area too safe, but we tried to move them back a little bit because, you know, these men that were, like I said, victims of a insane asylum, they were in big trouble to start with. And so we did move them back. But, yeah, combat is a pretty serious thing. It really is.
And how long were you guys fighting in Holland for?
I think 73 days we were in Holland. Not all the time on active firing, but a lot of it was because we were fighting under the British. A lot of it was we were in what you call a stationary or a stand-down position, waiting for the British to make up their mind what they were going to do. And we weren't too happy about it. The 82nd and the 101st we're not pleased about the whole thing, but we didn't have any choice. You have to do and go what you're told to do. We were across the Wall River. On the other side of the Wall River was the Germans. On this side we were. We only went back and forth up there during the night because the Germans were great at firing flares at night. Now when you're out in the field and a flare is fired, you just remain stoic. You don't move. The flare only lasts about 10 seconds and it goes off. But if you move, then the enemy can pick it up. But if you remain stationary while that flare was burning, then they wouldn't pick up a movement. So you had to be very, very knowledgeable about that, especially at nighttime. It was as scary as hell. And so that's just the way things are. You have to go with what you have. And but we did. We went with what we had to do. One time, one afternoon, here comes General Taylor and his entourage, 5 or 6 other officers with him. They're walking right up toward our observation point on the Wall River. We thought, oh God, here they come. Sure enough, the Germans saw them coming and they opened up artillery like you can't believe. Well, they started to open up artillery on this as they were approaching our area. They turned and ran back. And General Maxwell Taylor got shrapnel in his ass. Now, the medics picked the shrapnel out of his ass and they told us where he got hit. We said, oh yeah, he got hit running away. Sometimes the average soldier gets information that he really cherishes that normally he wouldn't get. But that's what happened. And he got shrapnel. And then they had the big parade for the whole division, come so he could get his Purple Heart. And we said, oh yeah, we know where he got hit. He got hit in the ass running away.
Now, do you remember what were some of your toughest days out there?
Yeah, I sure do. I sure do.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Your toughest days is when you're firing and you're getting more incoming. You're firing your weapons. You're firing your 81 mortars. And all of a sudden, here comes a whole bunch of fire right in on you. It's Germans. It's 88s. Boy, that's devastating as hell. Because you know they got you on their target. They know where you are. And they're going to unload their ammo at you. And they had a lot of ammo. We always had to be careful about how much ammo we had because you're carrying your ammo with you, You jump with it, and it's heavy, and you want to watch it. You don't want to fire at anything that you don't think is going to help you. You want a target that's active, they called it, an active target. So you're trying to conserve, is what I'm trying to say. And so you're always, like the colonel used to say, firepower coming in there, he said, if you get 5 shots at you, he says, you better be careful, he said, because you don't have much ammunition. You got to be very careful about what choice you are for a target. And he was right. They were right. So we were at Bastogne in Belgium, and the officer called and he says, this guy called up and he said, I need firepower. He said, what kind of firepower is he? He said, I need artillery firepower. He said, well, what's your situation? He said, I'm up here on the second floor of this building, he said, in Bastogne. He said, I can piss out the window, he said, and I can hit 4 German tanks. The guy said, I'll give you 1 round. That's the way it was. You had to be pretty careful. Every round was important.
Now, while you guys were in Holland, did you have any air support at all?
Oh, yes, we did. We did have air support in Holland, and it was helpful to us. We were very grateful for that, because if we didn't have air support, we would have been decimated a lot more than we were. It was wonderful. It really was. The Air Force really did a good job. They were limited. You know, the Germans had this big weapon. They called it the Anzio, the big artillery piece. They used it in Anzio in Italy. They moved it up to France. They moved it to Bastogne. They had it on a railroad track. They'd fire the weapon, they'd pull it back on the railroad track, and they'd put it right in the middle of a PW camp. Well, the Air Force flew over and they could see it, but they couldn't fire on it because they knew it was in the PW camp. The Germans, they were using a little careful tactics there. They knew what they were doing, all right. But it's just the way it was. It's a hell of a game when you're trying to kill each other.
Did any of your close friends get killed over
Oh,
there?
yes, a lot of them did. A lot of them did. They sure did, yeah. We lost a lot in Normandy. We lost a lot in Holland. We lost even more at Bastogne. The rifle companies really took it bad. I was in the headquarters company, so I was always a little bit behind, but the rifle companies, they were out there in front. Then poor guys, they got chewed up like you can't believe, because they were right out in front. The scouts out, and then the Germans were waiting for them, and they just cut them loose. And the rifle company men had a very, very difficult, short life, really, in combat.
How tough was it to learn that your buddies are dying, and then you have to continue on?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Do you just put it out of your mind?
That's right, you do. Because you don't want to, shall we say, you don't want to concentrate on your losses.
Yeah.
You want to remember your wins. And it's only human nature, I think, to be that way. Particularly if you're in a life or death situation. You sure as hell, you don't want to give any comfort to the enemy, that's for damn sure. No, I think I run out of juice there. That's okay.
You want to grab some more?
Oh, that's okay. I can wait a while. But that's just the way combat is, you know? It's a serious thing.
So after you guys are done in Holland,
Yes?
you return back to England again?
No. After Holland, we went back to our base camp in Reims in France. And there we were sitting there. We had a peaceful Thanksgiving dinner. Marlene Dietrich, a German anti-Nazi German entertainer, singer and dancer, she provided entertainment at our camp there. And so then shortly after that, we had a good Thanksgiving dinner, and then on, I think it was December 16th, the word come out at 2 o'clock in the morning, board the trailers. Well, sure, here comes all the trailers into the camp. The big semis, you know, and they have these big trailers behind them, slats on the side, little straw on the bottom. You guys are going up the front. Where the hell is the front? Said Bastogne. They were so right. They moved us 13 hours on that truck at night. You got off to relieve yourself every few miles. We got to Bastogne. We saw a few troopers coming toward us on the road. We thought, oh, they've taken care of this area. Oh, what a bunch of boomers we were. They hadn't taken care of the area. They were all surrendering. They were walking out. We walked right into Bastogne. The first troops into Bastogne. And there they were waiting for us.
Who was walking out?
A lot of our own people. our own soldiers, quartermaster, artillery, ordnance.
But you guys were headed the other way.
We were going in, they were coming out. They were retreating. In combat, you're either an aggressor or you're a coward. Only two things. They played the part of the coward. They were coming out. We were going in. No airborne division would ever want to be called a coward. Never. You go in. You fight the Germans. You don't come out. Retreat. We never retreated. Never. No.
Even when you were surrounded. You guys were always behind enemy.
That's right. We were. We jumped behind enemy lines. When you jump behind enemy lines, who do you think you are? You are what they call a spy. What's a spy? he's a military man that's probably disrespected throughout the world, but that's the way spies are. You know what I mean? When you're behind the enemy lines, you see what they have. You know what their ammunition is. You know what their firepower is, and that's an international thing. You're just a spy. Nobody has much respect for spies. No, they don't.
So you guys are marching into Bastogne.
Yes.
Maybe I need more.
Yes, I'd like a little more juice, please.
Please, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
I would like a little more lemonade, please.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So you guys are marching into Bastogne.
Yes.
It's winter time.
Yes.
It's cold.
Yes.
What type of clothing?
Very little. We didn't have, because we were rushed in at 2 o'clock in the morning from Reims. We didn't have, most of us didn't have overcoats. You know, we just had raincoats and your normal wool, unit. Some of them had fatigues on. They weren't wool. They were, just more or less cloth material. You know what I mean? So yeah, we were hurting. We were hurting because we didn't have proper winter clothing. We went into Bastogne. That's true. But hey, you come along. There's a soldier. He's dead. He doesn't need his overcoat anymore. So you pick up his overcoat and you take it with you.
Now, the reason for you guys not jumping in, was it a time factor? Is that what you said? They could truck you in quicker, or?
You're correct about that. It was a time factor because it happened so quickly that there was, the military didn't have time to, or they didn't have the facility there in France to get paratroopers equipped. You know what I mean? There's no parachutes. Let's say it. There's no parachutes there or anything like that. So we had to go in by truck. That's right. And that's just the way it was. I mean, you can't always choose what you're going to have to do with. You know what I mean?
Got to be able to adapt.
You are so right. You are so right. You have to adapt real quick. We did.
So once you got into Bastogne, when did you realize the situation you guys were in? I mean, because you guys were completely surrounded.
Yes, we were. Yes, we were.
How quickly did that happen?
We were outnumbered 4-1. It happened real quick. We did on the 16th of December, and by the 18th of December, we knew we were surrounded.
And how do you learn that information? I mean,
you only get it through word of mouth. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you get it.
You send scouts out.
That's right. That's right. And the commander of one unit says, "Hey," says, "we're overrun by the Germans here. Some of our units have already surrendered." You know, you're in deep doo-doo.
And you guys are in the forest?
Yep. Hertigen Forest, north of Bastogne.
Pretty dense?
Very dense. Very dense. Yep.
That may have helped.
Yes, it did. So when you're out in the forest in the wintertime, it's a lot warmer than out in the open fields. There's a lot of snow. And oh yeah, the forest is a lot warmer place to be, and that's the way it was at the Hertigen Forest in outside of Bastogne. As it was.
Now, how close were the Germans in either direction?
Well, they were right there. They're right there.
I mean, like 100 yards?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were. They had us. They had us pretty much surrounded at Bastogne.
And are they firing on you?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were. And their firepower was pretty superior with the 88s. Pretty devastating. But we held on. Finally, Patton come in with his tanks and helped us out immeasurably. We didn't have much firepower, you know.
How long were you guys holding out for?
Well, from the 16th of December till about the, I would say about the 9th or 10th of January. We were defending our position there, right. Before the tide turned, before Patton could come in with the heavy artillery and neutralize the German situation for us. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just the way things are.
And there was no way to resupply you guys. So
we got resupplies, but only when the clouds left the sky, so that the Air Force could come over from England and supply us with ammunition.
So they airdropped it to you.
They airdropped it to us, and we had the ammo and we had food because we were short of food too.
Yeah.
And so they did. But what happens is the sky has to clear, the sun has to come out, so that the Air Force can see where our front lines are. Now, we had what they call orange panels.
Intermedio. Intermiso.
Oh, thank you.
These orange panels were pieces of cloth about maybe 20 feet long and maybe 2 feet wide. And they were panels that we laid out so the Air Force, when they flew over, they knew where our front line was. Mm-hmm. And so we had to be careful, because if it snowed, we had to run out and get the snow off the panels so that they would know that our line was still there. So it was something that we had to take care of pretty quickly.
Do we need to take a break, or
No.
Okay.
I know how long is you take it. You can stay longer.
Okay.
No.
We're getting towards the end of the
Okay, all right.
the interview here. So are you good? Do you need to take a break at all?
No, oh hell no. Here, have a date.
All right.
I will be back in Trafalgar. Okay.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you. So do you remember when that airdrop came in?
I sure do.
What day it was?
No, I can't say I actually remember the actual day, but it must have been around I would say just a few days before Christmas. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the exact date. It sure did help.
So you still had your machine gun at this time, or did you have a different weapon?
No. He had a Thompson sub. Mm-hmm.
So how much ammo would you be carrying for that?
2 clips. One 15 round, one 30. 2 clips, that's all. Pretty heavy, 45 caliber.
And did you ever run out?
Yep, I did.
So what do you do at that point? Try to
You
find
have to call for more help.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of ammo. Something you don't want to say.
No.
You hate to say it, but when you run out of ammo, you got to say it. Here, have one of these.
Oh yeah, those are good.
Oh yeah.
So did you guys have to set up a perimeter?
Yes.
How did you guys defend yourselves? Was it
The officer in charge sets up the perimeter. He tells you what your primary targets are. He also tells you what your secondary targets are. If you feel that you've run out of primary targets, you don't have to worry about them anymore. Then you go into your secondary targets. Well, that was a decision that has to be made by the commanding officer. You don't make those decisions. No.
Now, for you guys, being located in the forest, was artillery for you guys obsolete? I mean, could you fire mortars?
Yes, you could fire mortars, but they weren't too effective because there's so damn many trees, in the forest. All you fire when you fire mortars, it's like when they fire artillery in the forest.
Yeah.
There's splinters all over the place. Splinters flying all around.
And those were almost as dangerous sometimes.
That's right. They were. Yeah.
Now, how close were you to? Were any of them landing close to where you were?
Oh yes. Yeah. With 25, 50 yards. Oh yeah.
Did you feel the
Yeah. Oh
concussion?
sure you could. You were dug in, But no matter how deep you dig the foxhole, explosives are still a danger.
And how difficult was
The shrapnel.
Yeah. And how difficult was it to dig into the ground?
Oh, that was hard. It was frozen, But if there was a lot of snow on it, then you could hopefully, if the snowfall was pretty heavy a few days before, it wasn't so much frost in the ground then. You can dig the snow off and get down and dig a little bit of the dirt out, But you want to dig in as fast as you can because you want to make it cover for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of us had more time. We dug bigger holes and we put logs over the top of the holes. Put a little dirt on top of them. That made a pretty good bunker.
Probably helped keep it a bit warmer.
You're darn right it was. A lot warmer.
Now, what color were the uniform that you guys were wearing? Was it like the olive drab?
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't olive drab. It's kind of we had a, what the heck they call them? Well, we call them like combat uniform. They were kind of a green color, two-piece.
So it didn't blend in with the snow very well.
No, it didn't. The Germans had some white outfits they wore, and that was a help to them. We didn't have any white outfits, no.
So what were some of the things you would do to stay warm to fight off the frostbite?
Well, number one, if you could possibly find a little old building to get into, that'd be the best thing. You didn't want to be out on the open ground if you could help it. You get a little building, I didn't care if it was bombed or what the hell, if the roof was gone or whatever it was, but you try to get in there, you get a little bit of cover from the weather, it started to snow or rain. It rained and snowed both. So you had to keep dry if you could. And some of the people would go into these big old Frenchmen's chateaus, and they could keep dry in there, but then we always knew that the Germans knew they had them zeroed in too, They knew where they were.
Now, you spent Christmas out there.
Sure did.
What was that like for you?
Devastating. I was sitting in a hole with a guy. I said, my God, it's Christmas Eve and the Germans just bombed the hospital, and they did. They bombed the hospital on Christmas Eve in Bastogne.
Military hospital?
It
was a military hospital?
Yes, it was. They bombed it on Christmas Eve. They didn't give a shit. This is the way they were. That was their MO, their modus operandi. destroy anything they could.
Did they ask you guys to surrender at any point?
Yes, they sure did. You know, the white flag, McAuliffe, the whole bit. Taylor was back in the States to spend Christmas with his family in the States. So when Tony McAuliffe said nuts to him, he made a big name for himself. He got the command of the 4th Infantry Division shortly after that. Taylor had to hurry back from the States there to get over there to Bastogne because he didn't want to be away from the battlefield when the battle was going on. We came back up there. We were out in the snow clear up to our belts, and the snow out there outside of Bastogne, and he come up to us and he said, "Men," he said, "I want to compliment you on the defense of Bastogne." We had one of the guys with us. He was a cook from upstate New York. His name was Emerson. He said, "General," everybody fell silent. He said, "How was the States?" General turned and walked away. What the hell could he say? He was the States when it all blew open. Enlisted man, a lot of times he gets kind of a big kick out of what the military hierarchy is doing, you know. They try to cover their tracks. Sometimes it don't work.
So can you elaborate a little bit about nuts, about that story and how that came to be?
Which one is that?
Well, you said it was the reply, the American reply to the Germans. Is that correct? When they replied?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Yeah. When he carried that flag out there and the Germans wanted him to surrender.
Yeah. Can you elaborate? Who was carrying what flag and
Well, one of the men.
Yeah,
one of the men in Tony McAuliffe's headquarters was carrying the flag. The Germans came in with this flag, and they said they want us to surrender to them. And that's when he gave the German officer, they took the blindfold off the officer and let him look at him. Took the blindfold and put the blindfold back on the officer. He says, "Nuts." Just one word, nuts. German went back to his headquarters. He said, "What does nuts mean?" And Colonel Harper was the head of the 27th Glider Infantry Division unit. Was right there. Colonel Harper looked at him. He said, "It's the same thing as go to hell." They unloaded their ammo then. They had a lot of ammo. They unloaded.
What day was that?
I think it was either the few days before, I'm not sure, or the few days after Christmas.
Okay.
I'm not sure which it was.
And my question is, how does an enemy officer make his way to the other side? You know, you said he's blindfolded and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen without him remaining captured or being killed?
No.
What's the protocol there?
The protocol is when the enemy approaches you, if he's carrying a white flag, you do not fire on him, because he's there to give you some information. And so they held their fire. He came in. He had an interpreter. He spoke both German and English. They had their conversation there. He let them know what his purpose was, and we knew what his purpose was. So that's the way it was resolved. Right.
But then you send him back.
Send him back. Tell him we're not going to
So he can
retreat.
relay that information.
We're going to fire again.
What's to prevent you from just keeping him? Is it against the rules of engagement?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's a good point you bring it up. I'll tell you why. If you said, "Oh, we're not going to let him go back to his lines. We're going to keep him here," that's a show that you don't have enough of confidence in your ability to face the enemy. In other words, you're telling him that we're more interested in surrender than we are in counter you. So that's why that doesn't work.
And it sets a precedent.
That's right. It does. It does set a precedent. Right.
It's interesting, these wars. It's I mean, you're trying to kill each other, but at the same time, there's these little intricacies.
Sure, there is. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
It's interesting. So you guys held out for about 3 weeks, and then Patton's army came
That's
strolling
right.
in, and
That's right. We were happy to see Patton come in with his tanks.
then how quickly did they get things cleaned up? Enough to get you guys out of there, or?
Yeah, I would say, what, 2 or 3 days? Take long.
And were you guys relieved as soon as possible?
Yeah, we were. That's right. Yep.
And what ensued afterwards? Where did you guys?
That's a good question. Right after Bastogne, we were relieved. We were sent to the 7th Army front in a place called Strasbourg in France. It's near the German border. And we were sent down there because they said that there was a whole, there was a battalion of Germans, had a whole regiment of the 42nd Rainbow Division tied up in Strasbourg. And we were sent down there, and in 3 weeks we cleaned that whole damn mess out. And the Germans retreated. But the Germans did have, they had a good unit in there, but they had, how should I say this, they had brainwashed the 42nd Division. And they were backing off. And we said, no, we can't have backing off. That's not going to work with us. So we went down there and we took over the area and we cleared the Germans out real quick. Some units in the American military were not very competent in combat. And the 42nd Division was one of the units that was that way. I talked to members of that unit after I got out of the service, and they told me, yeah, it was true. They said we had 3 colors on our uniform. It was blue, green, and yellow. He said the yellow was the predominant color. You never know.
Now, can that be attributed to training that they received? Is there any way to?
Some people said they were overtrained. They were trained to the point of where they were useless in combat. They were given so much I don't know what you call it, should I use the word, method of operation, modus operandi, or what it was. But anyway, they were convinced that they couldn't do anything, and that's a bad situation for a unit that's supposed to be active in combat.
Got to be able to improvise.
That's right.
Now, did you guys take any prisoners?
Oh yes, we took a lot of prisoners. But the minute you take the prisoners, the protocol in the U.S. military is they have a a unit that's close by that you have to turn the prisoners over to. You don't turn them loose to a paratrooper company. Oh God, no. That would be a disaster. You turn them over to some of these other guys that are further back at Corps headquarters.
What would have happened if a parachute company got a hold of them?
They'd shoot them. But that's just the way we were. The way we were trained to do. There's a lot of difference between being an active combat soldier and being a non-active combat soldier. A lot of difference. You get a whole different mindset on everything. You sure do.
Now, did you encounter any of the concentration camps that existed over there?
Yes, we did. Our unit, liberated a concentration camp on the German-French border. I think it was called Landau, but I'm not sure if I got that pronunciation right. We did liberate a concentration camp, yes.
And did you go into it?
I did not go into it, no.
Did you see any of the prisoners?
But some of the other people did, yes, right.
Did you see any of the prisoners that were in there?
Oh, yes. Can
you describe their...
Yeah, they were decimated. Mm-hmm. They were skin and bones, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And nobody really knew that this was going on during that time?
That's right. It was not well known. No, it wasn't.
So was it a bit of a shock to see?
It was a bit of a shock. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Right. I think when General Eisenhower went into that first camp and he saw the conditions in there, he was really shocked. He didn't realize that that's what was going on. You know, it was true. It was true. It was a well-kept secret, I guess you could say. Right.
And then eventually you guys made your way to Berchtesgaden, you said?
Yes, we did. Yep. We hopped on the trucks in Reims, France, and we rode 13 hours at night. We finally got to Berchtesgaden. Oh, not Berchtesgaden. No, I got to Bastogne. You're talking about Berchtesgaden, all right?
That's following your
yeah, well,
Bastogne,
well, when we were advancing through Germany, we're down, and I always remember we would cross the Rhine River, and here's the Autobahn, that big superhighway, and a whole bunch of German airplanes were parked on either side of that highway, all the way down to Linz in Austria. The Germans run out of gasoline. If Hitler could have got gasoline, he could have made that thing last for another 6 months, but he run out of gas. There's all the planes parked right there on the.
Because he had lost, I guess, some pretty big oil fields a few months
Potassium fields in Austria or Bulgaria or someplace. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, you have to remember this. A lot of people don't understand this, but it's true. I would say 25% of the shells that were fired on us in World War II were duds. Why? Because they were manufactured in Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, and those other Middle Eastern countries. They were all anti-Nazis. So they sabotaged the shells. The damn shells were duds. They'd finally come right up in front of our unit, and they wouldn't go off. They sabotaged it. Yes, they did.
A good thing they did.
Yes, it was a good thing they did. Yeah, a lot of people that really were bent on sabotaging the Nazis every chance they could get. Especially those people from those countries that have been dominated by the Nazis for so long and treated so badly. They were trying to get back at them, and they did. That's their way of getting back.
So you guys were moving through Europe pretty quickly.
Yes, we were.
You were taking territory at a good pace. So could you sort of see the end of the war?
Sure did.
You'd see the finish line?
We got down to Berchtesgaden, and we stayed there about, I think almost 3 months. We were at Berchtesgaden. Because that's where the German hierarchy, all their high-ranking officers, they all lived in that area. And the people that lived in that area, they got better rations than anybody else in Germany because they were Nazi sympathizers. And we got down there and we said, oh my God, these people, they got wine, they got alcohol, they got all kinds of stuff here. And the rest of the country, they didn't have much of a supply of anything like that. So we soon learned that that's where the sympathizers were, and they're the ones that held the liquor and the food and everything else. They were in charge of it, and they weren't They weren't penalized as much as the other people in the rest of the remaining part of Germany were. They had no rations for them.
Now, did you make it all the way to Hitler's hideout?
Yep. All the way to the Eagle's Nest. We did. We stayed there for a long time. 2 or 3 months. You know, we captured Schreiker and Schultz and 3 or 4 other big wigs in the German hierarchy, and turned them over to the MPs up at Nuremberg. They put them on trial. Remember Hermann Göring was on trial up there at Nuremberg? Now, I had a friend. He just passed away last year. His name was Art Stalemates. Yeah. Art Stalemates was a guard at the Nuremberg trial. He told me, he said, Göring would sit there, he'd do like that. He said, then the Germans could answer questions. If he went like that, they couldn't answer questions. And he himself was on trial. He later took a cyanide pill. But he was a fat guy. He was 5'6", and he weighed 260 pounds or something. He's a chubby guy. But he said he'd sit there in the trial, Art said, and he'd shake his head like that. The Germans weren't supposed to answer the questions that were on trial. And if he went like that, they could. He said, what a bunch of crap he was. He said, one day, he said, I walked into his cell. He said he had all kinds of pieces of paper on the floor. He said, I told him, I said, you got to pick up those pieces of paper. Snapped his heels together. He said, field marshals don't do that. Art said, I figured I'd get him. The next day, there was no food for him. He picked up the pieces of paper after that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, sometimes you had to do drastic things to get their attention, but Art was a famous man, a very famous man. When we went back to Nuremberg a couple of years ago, Art took us through all that camp at Nuremberg. It was a big concentration camp. He showed us where every one of the doors were and everything. The guide in there was telling us about the camp and giving us a little bit of history, and he turned around to us and he looked and he says, wait a minute, he said, this man here knows more about this place than I do. So he let him take over as a guide for the for the tour of the camp.
All day.
What?
What's that?
Picking stockhouse all day.
Yeah.
He very emotional.
He's a good speaker.
Yeah. Good memory.
Yes. Very good memory.
But Art was a very famous man.
So when did you make it to the Eagle's Nest? When were you? Was this was after the war had ended? So it was after your birthday then, yeah? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your birthday.
What?
Let's talk about your birthday. May 7th, correct?
May 7th, I'll be 97 years old.
Yeah. But it's also VE Day, correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yep.
So, May 7th, 1945, where were you?
I was at a place called Berchtesgaden.
Okay, so you were...
Yep, when the war ended. That's where I was. Right there at the Eagle's Nest.
Oh, so you were there on your birthday.
I was.
How did that feel?
Good. I enjoyed that. I said, hey, the war's over on my birthday. Pretty good feeling. They called it May 8th in the United States, but over there in Europe it was May 7th. Yeah, I felt good about it.
And to be in a place, I mean, you were in...
That's right.
Hitler's office, essentially.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Huh? Mm-hmm. Huh? Hitler didn't like the area. He didn't like the area around Berchtesgaden. He said the air was too thin for him. He had trouble breathing, I guess.
Is that a high elevation?
Right? It is. 6,500 feet. You're looking right out there at the Swiss Alps. You see, on the horizon, you can see this, the coast of Italy, coming over the Alps there. Mm-hmm. Berchtesgaden. Mm-hmm. Beautiful place.
And how long were you there for?
Oh, God, we were there a couple of months. When the war ended. See, our mission then was to bring in all these high-ranking Nazis and tell them they got to start a provisional government of their own right there, right now. And they did. They did. Well, Patton was right. They bring those guys in here. They got to start their own government now. He was right about that.
Now, was there any talks about sending you guys to the Pacific?
Yep, sure was. You know, Taylor got us together. He said, "Man, I got good news for you." He said, "We're going to Japan." We booed him. We'd had enough of fighting. We didn't want to go to Japan. But you know, these commanders of these units, to them it's just another chance for promotion. To us, another chance of getting killed. We weren't too keen on going to Japan. No. We don't want no part of that.
Now, were you guys aware of what was happening in the Pacific at all?
Not too much, no.
Because you were obviously focused on what.
That's right. We knew that when MacArthur signed the armistice, you know, we knew that because he used a Parker pen. I worked for the Parker Pen Company. He signed the agreement with the Parker Pen.
Were you aware that? I'm assuming you probably knew that Bastogne and Corregidor had been taken.
Yes, we did.
So you knew that your buddies
right
were captured.
That's right. I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah. They were captured early on in the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that?
Yeah.
Did that have any effects on you?
Yeah, it did. Because I knew some of them.
Yeah. Did they make it out?
Nope, they didn't. They didn't make it out.
Now, do you remember where you were when the war had ended in the Pacific as well? When the bombs had been dropped?
Yes, I do. I do remember.
Can you talk about that day or those days?
Well, we were grateful that they had finally, you know, they finally were able to accomplish the mission. We really were. Yeah. They're pretty important to us.
Did you catch word that the U.S. had dropped these massive bombs on the mainland?
Yep, we did. Yeah. I think Harry Truman did the right thing. Mm-hmm. I really do.
You feel the results would have been a lot worse had we invaded?
That's right. The Japanese weren't about to surrender. They were going to take a lot of other people with them. You bet they were. Yeah, they were. To the point of being suicidal mission, you know what I mean? Yeah. The Harry-Carry.
Now, when did you return back to the States?
The last day of December 1945. I got to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. Got my discharge. Went in at Fort Sheridan on the 13th of March, 1943. I come out on the last day of the year, 1945. Fort Sheridan, Illinois.
And where did you go after you were discharged?
Right back to work for the same company I worked for before I went in the service.
Just pick up where you left off?
We were making, no. Instead of making equipment for testing fuses, we were making x-ray tables for the wounded.
It's not a defense
No,
factory anymore.
no. Of the military, we were making x-ray tables. No, we were.
How were you received when you returned home?
Very, very nicely. My parents were still alive. I had a younger brother. Everybody was very respectful.
How happy were they to see you?
Very happy. They knew that I had seen a lot of combat and I'd survived.
Were you able to correspond with them while you were overseas?
Yes, I was. Through letters. That's right. Yeah. I got married March 31st, 1945. A little girl from Manchester, England. She died in 01.
You got married overseas?
Yep. I did.
How did you meet?
Got a furlough after Normandy. Went back to our base camp in England. A 7-day furlough. My buddy and I said, well, where's a good place to go for a furlough? Well, they said that a good place to go is Manchester, England. Okay. Tom and I took a GI truck. Company was right next to us. Southern Power of England. Said, hey, we go up there every week. Okay. Hopped on the truck, drove up to Manchester. A lot of pretty English girls up there. Amusement park called Bellevue. That's where I met this little girl called Eileen. She said, I'll write you a letter every day. I thought, boy, that's nice. Everybody likes to receive mail in the military. And she did. From that day on, she wrote me a letter every day. I got a furlough the following March. I left France, went back to England. We got married. Easter Saturday afternoon, 31st of March, 1945. She came to this country May 12th, 1946, with our oldest daughter. We had 2 daughters after that, 3 children. She died in 01. She was a British war bride. She came on the Queen Mary, last group to come on the Queen Mary to the United States.
The one that's parked up in...
The one that's in dry dock at Long Beach.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Right
She
by
came
me.
on that. Yep, she did. Yep. I was on the Queen Mary last year, Queen Mary 2. Went from Southampton to New York.
Mm-hmm.
This year, maybe later this month, I may go on the Queen Mary from New York to Southampton.
So you can make it out to France for
Yep.
for the anniversary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You gonna go with that foundation, the Greatest Generation Foundation again, or?
I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't got the latest word on it yet, but that's the way it's shaped up right now. Mm-hmm.
So did your brother? Did he fight in the war as well?
No, he was not. He was a farmer. My father was a farmer, so he didn't go in the military during the war.
Did they have exemption?
Yeah, they did. Yes, they did. Yep. Yep, they were growing the products to feed the military.
So what brought you to California?
My youngest daughter was living here in Santee. My wife died. She said, "Why don't you move out to California? It's got good weather." I said, "Oh, it does? Yeah." So I did. I moved to California in May 2001. And I'm still here.
And you were in Wisconsin
All my life.
all your life until 2001.
Yep, I was. I worked for the Parker Pen Company. I was a tool and die maker. A good job. Retired, 86. So I was happy about that. I had a pension from the company. And I was happy when I moved to Santee. My daughter since moved to a place called Green Valley, Arizona, near the Mexican border. My other daughter, oldest daughter's passed away in 2004. My other daughter lives in a place called Vail, Arizona, near Tucson. She's coming out here, I think, Wednesday or Thursday. She's coming out to visit me.
You have any grandchildren?
Yeah, I do. I got 2 grandsons, and I got 2 granddaughters. Right. Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Yep.
Now, I just have a few more questions for you.
Sure.
You received the Bronze Star.
Yes, I did.
Was that for any particular event or act?
Yeah, I got on my uniform there. It's from Bastogne.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
From being surrounded by the enemy and...
Yep, that's right.
Now you're getting pretty close to 100 years.
Yes, I am.
You've seen a lot of change in your lifetime.
I sure have.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I don't.
Do you have any advice for future generations? Anything you could, any wisdom you could?
Well, I'm always proud of the American military, man. I think the U.S. military trains their people well. I think they do a good job for them, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the people that serve in our military. Even today, they have so many people on active duty, and they got a tough job to do. Trying to convince the world that America is a pretty good place. It's not easy to convince a lot of people, but it's true. It's the best country in the world. It really is.
Well, I want to thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
For taking your time and sharing
Thank
your
you
story.
very much, too. I appreciate your time.
And thank you for my freedom.
Okay.
I wouldn't have it without you.
Well, we did what we had to do. You guys could do the same thing, I'm sure.